What's up, Sen Squad? Welcome back to another Brawl Stars video. Today I'm going to be making another video on the important topic of healing in Brawl Stars. Something that is super important and obviously comes into play every single game, but there's not really any stats out there for it, so people don't really know how to use those stats to their advantage and play around it to minimize the time they have to spend healing so they can maximize the time they're dealing damage to their opponents. So I'm going to go over that in today's video, specifically how much time it takes from when you take damage to when you start healing, and it's not actually consistent every time you do it. But I figured out exactly what determines when you're going to start healing, and this is super important to know, so I do recommend you watch until the end, but let's get started. So to measure the time in between taking damage and starting to heal, it's pretty easy. I just took damage in the training cave with the bot that shoots lasers, waited until I started to heal, and then recorded that whole thing, opened it up on my computer, and basically went frame by frame and counted the number of frames from immediately after the time I got hit to immediately right when I start healing. And in my first trial, I used Frank for this, and I counted exactly 237 frames. Now, since the video was at 60 frames per second, you just divide that by 60, so that means it took exactly 3.95 seconds to start healing after I took damage. Now, that sounds weirdly specific, but maybe I thought that this was a number that was specific to Frank, so I tried a different brawler. This time I used Brock for no reason, just because Brock was near the top of my brawler list, and this time I counted exactly 224 frames from the time that I got hit to the time I started healing. Now, that comes out to about 3.73 seconds. So this was a different number, off by about a fifth of a second. So now I thought that maybe each brawler had their own individual time it takes for them to start healing. So once again, I switched to a different brawler and tried Mr. P, and this time I counted exactly 180 frames. So that's exactly 3 seconds. And now, while they're all different numbers for each of the brawlers that I got in my testing, it did seem kind of random. So I went back to Frank and did another test run in the training cave attacked by the same brawler and went to count the frames in this new trial. And it turns out that this time I got a count of 10 frames less. So I went from 237 frames to 227 frames, which drops it from 3.95 seconds to 3.78 seconds. So that's a huge difference. It wasn't just an error in my counting. I rechecked both videos over and over again, and there was this difference. So now I was really confused because it seemed like it was just a random number every single time. So I went back to Brock again, and the same thing happened. I got a completely different value. I went from 224 frames, which is 3.73 seconds, to 181 frames, which is just 3.02 seconds. So almost 3/4 of a second were dropped here, and that's insanely significant when it comes down to the game. You can sometimes release like 2 or 3 attacks in those 3/4 of a second. So this is a huge difference, and it's definitely something that we need to take into account. But I really wanted to know why this happened and if there was any predictable way to determine how long it would take you to heal, and it turns out I did find an explanation for this. So I basically did a bunch of trials over and over again to see if I could find the pattern for this healing. And no matter which brawlers I tried, no matter how many times I tried it, I always got a number of frames in between 180 and 240, which if you just divide that by 60, that's between 3 and 4 seconds. So it was never, no matter what, more than 4 seconds, and it was never below 3 seconds. And I actually tested Tick with his well-oiled star power as well, which is supposed to take off 2 seconds from your healing time, and I did many trials, and once again, I never got fewer than 60 frames, and I never got more than 120 frames. So this was always between 1 and 2 seconds, which is just 2 off the 3 to 4 seconds that you would get with any other brawler. So that checks out. It's in the same range, but once again, it seems kind of random. But then I had a bit of an idea. So I went into Duo Showdown and waited until both of us on the same team got hit, and it wasn't at the exact same time. And when we walked away after we started healing, the ticks that increased our health once per second were actually synchronized. So it happened at the exact same time, even though we got hit at different times. So what this tells us is that there's this universal time or clock beneath the game that counts the seconds out. So imagine just any normal timer counting up once per second. And every time it increases by 1 second, you're going to heal a little bit of your health, but you can't heal it at any point other than when that clock ticks up by 1 second. So if you get hit in between 2 of these seconds, so if the clock ticks up 1 and then you get hit and then it ticks up again a bit after, that means 3 seconds later, when you're now entering in the moment when you can start to heal, the tick won't happen right on that 3 seconds because you didn't get hit right when it went up by a second. Instead, you have to wait for that clock to go up by a second before you can start healing. So that's why we get this range of anywhere from 3 to 4 seconds, because you can either get hit right on the second, or you can get hit maybe half a second after the clock ticks up, or you can get hit 9/10 of a second after the clock ticks up. And so the time that you're actually going to start to heal is restricted to be at least 3 seconds. And this is going to explain the seemingly random time it takes for all these different brawlers to start healing. It's actually the same for every single brawler. It just won't be the same if you do it over and over again, because you're not going to get hit right when this universal internal clock for the game ticks up. So that means in the middle of a game, it's kind of impossible to tell whether or not you're going to heal closer to 3 seconds or you're going to start healing closer to 4 seconds later. So you want to play around this in your strategy. It takes 8 ticks of healing to go from basically 0 health all the way up to full health for every single brawler, as I talked about in another video I did on healing. Make sure you go check that out for more information on this topic. But that means that other than that first tick, there's going to be 7 other ticks of healing. So that's 7 seconds it's going to take to do that, and it takes 3 to 4 seconds for that first tick. So it's a total of 10 to 11 seconds to fully heal a brawler from the moment you got hit and you're down at like 1 or 2 hit points all the way up to your full health. So you want to make sure you give yourself those full 11 seconds to fully heal before you go back in and start taking damage again. And similarly, if you're at half health, it's going to take 4 ticks of healing. So that means you have those 3 to 4 seconds plus 3 more ticks. So that's going to take 6 to 7 seconds to fully heal from half health. So you want to make sure that you stay out of battle for the full 7 seconds, since you don't want to take the risk that you go back in 6 seconds after and you get unlucky and your healing doesn't start until later. So it ends up taking 7 seconds to heal and then you won't get the full healing. But then again, this is only if you're counting seconds. But most of the time you can literally just look at your health bar, wait until you start healing, and then you're just healing once every second. So you can use that as a gauge of when you're going to be full on health. But knowing this interval of 3 to 4 seconds actually becomes useful in your strategy when you only want 1 or 2 ticks of health. If you're in the middle of battle and you are maybe really low health and you just want a slight bit of healing just to give you the edge in the battle, you want to know how long you're going to have to dodge for. And so you want to assume that you'll be able to dodge for 4 seconds, not taking any damage, so that way you can guarantee that you'll at least get 1 tick of health back. If you only put yourself in a position where you can dodge for 3 seconds, then it's going to be a lot less likely that you'll be able to get that first healing tick, and it's more of a gamble. So whenever you're in that position, always assume it's going to take 4 seconds to start healing. That's the worst case scenario. So that means it's always the safe play and you're gonna get that health back no matter what. And if you want an indicator of 4 seconds, brawlers usually have a movement speed of approximately 2.5 tiles. It can go all the way up to like 3 tiles if you're BB with a home run star power, and then 8-bit is closer to 2 tiles per second. But since brawlers have that movement speed of 2.5 tiles per second, that means in those 4 seconds that it takes to start healing, you'll be able to move about 10 tiles. So you can sort of use that as a gauge for how long it's going to take you to start healing. You'll be able to move 10 tiles, and the healing should definitely start before then, whether it's right at the end of those 10 tiles or closer to 7.5 tiles, where the 3-second mark is. But hopefully that informs your strategy going forward, and it's the little things like this that add up and really just make you a better Brawl Stars player. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like and a comment down below. Don't forget to join the Send Squad by subscribing. But that's all for today, guys, so see you later.